Starting a campaign in a Total War Saga Troy can be kind of difficult. You've got 8 total campaigns to choose from across all 8 heroes as of the launch of the game. This doesn't include the Amazons or any of the planned DLCs throughout the remainder of this year. So in this video today, I'm going to go through the 4 Danaan characters of Achilles, Agamemnon, Odysseus, and Menelaus. And the way I'm essentially going to do this is I'm going to select a character. We're going to talk about that character's overview right here. So if I select this one, we're going to talk about some of those mechanics, their unit type, and essentially their kind of play style. We're going to jump into a turn 1 of their campaign, and I'm going to give you a rundown of how their mechanics work. And then I'm going to tell you essentially, hey, if you decide to start this campaign, this is what this play style is going to be like. This is what this hero kind of hinges upon, either mechanically or the way that his units work and the play style that he's after. And in this video, we'll just be covering the Danaans. Then I'll have another video for the Trojans that'll come out shortly after this one. So if you want a really quick primer on each individual hero, you'll be able to see timestamps in the timeline and you can jump to the individual hero to find out more about them. But let's just dive in here, starting with Achilles, and we'll progress all the way down to Agamemnon, to Odysseus, and Menelaus. If this is your first time starting and you want a recommendation on who to choose, that way you can jump to the relevant timeline stamp. It does say Agamemnon is a really good one because it has tutorial mode campaign, but he's actually quite a difficult hero to play. My personal opinion, if this is your first time playing, go with Menelaus. He doesn't have a lot of natural opposition, and you have the ability to use Spartan colonies and call to arms to get some very strong units and expand your empire very quickly. So let's jump into Achilles and talk some more about him. So here we have Achilles in his starting position in Phthia here. And every single character will have the same kind of information we've gone through in our beginner's guide. If you have not looked at the beginner's guide and you are looking at this and trying to find out which campaign to play and you get stuck, you'll find a link in the description in the upper right corner. But you've got your 4 heroes here, or 3 heroes that you can take advantage of: archers, defenders, and fighters. So you're going to have a heavy melee combatant, a melee combatant that's also pretty defensive and really focuses on healing the army as well as himself, and then archers, which have some nice abilities to help hinder the enemy or to do damage to them depending on the skirmisher or the trickster. Now the big thing here with Achilles is his unique faction units. Achilles himself is a very strong combatant, but he does rely on his army to really kind of win the day here, and his faction mechanics or his faction units are very interesting. So you get Thalassian Marines, and that progresses into Aegean Runners, some Pelagic Thalassians, Myrmidon Swordsmen, the famous Myrmidons, as well as Spear-fighting Myrmidons, and then Aegean Javelin Men. So the big thing with Achilles' army, and you're going to find this, every single hero has got some sort of motif that replicates across your army. With Achilles' army, you're going to be dealing with a lot of units that require flanking maneuvers. Taking a look here at the Thessalian Marines, you get flanking attack improved and stock. So they're hidden up until the point that they actually get within range and they can be discovered. And hopefully by that point, it's too late. You can get some good charge damage in with the charge bonus of 32, which is pretty substantial for an infantry unit, and get a lot of really good juicy damage coming in from this two-handed early game infantry unit. But as this progresses up to your Myrmidon Swordsmen, you don't get heavy armored badasses in Achilles' army. You're dealing mainly with medium in the late game and light armor in the early game, because as you take a look here, your Myrmidon Swordsmen and Spear-fighting Myrmidons are going to be your late game units. They're your top tier military units that are going to be pumping out. What they really benefit in, if I can ever hover over the icon here, is they get flanking attack improved. So again, you're doing a lot of flanking maneuvers with Achilles' army as much as possible. You're also getting unbreakable, so these guys are going to hold the line, and immune to psychology. They also get fire while moving. So these units, while they are moving into flank, they can shoot the enemy with their armor-piercing missile javelins, which is really strong. And in addition to that, they can hold the line while Achilles goes for the throat and kills the opposition. So let's jump into the campaign and take a look at his 2 faction mechanics, Living Legend and Hot-Blooded Achilles. So here we are at turn 1 for Achilles, and we're not going to move beyond this point. I don't want this to be a spoiler for anyone who's looking to start this campaign. So let's jump right here into a hot-blooded Achilles. You've got 4 dispositions here for Achilles: proud, indignant, grieving, and outraged. And these 4 dispositions you're going to move through depending on the situation that you're under. So for example, indignant, you can select here and you can see what the benefits and the penalties are of being indignant. So plus 30% to all resources and plus 10 to happiness, which is strong, but you lose influence and you lose the ability to really do a lot of diplomacy. Sustain Achilles' mood. Achilles will remain indignant for each turn he spends garrisoned in a settlement, indulging in festivities with a local populace. Hovering over this, though, also tells us the influences on these individual dispositions. So the current amount is 0%. And we don't have any lost ancillaries. We haven't broken diplomatic treaties. We haven't any Achilles refusing to get to duel. So those things will further contribute to this outside of this little ditty right here. Jumping to grieving, we can see that Achilles will continue to grieve as long as there is a priest in his army, as religion's somber rituals remind him of his lost comrades. And for this, you get an increase to the favor of your god from temples, an increase to experience, and favor from priestess rituals is increased by 20%, but you lose happiness. And outraged, and this is going to be typically done whenever you're doing any kind of war or fighting. Achilles will remain enraged every turn he spends in battle, as each life he takes further fuels his aggression. But this will help out very substantially if you are at war, because it will help out with damage, 25% to damage of all units, which is huge. 100% to treasure looted, 10% casualty replenishment, 40% to melee attack of all unit for Achilles' army himself. They're going to do more damage, and melee attack means that they're more likely to hit. So they're 40% more likely to hit, and when they do hit, they'll do 25% more damage. 100% increase to income from raiding, looting, and sacking, all the things you do at war, like you do. But then a 30% reduction to resources, so your income is really going to get hit by this, and your growth is going to get fractured. You're not going to have a lot of growth in your provinces. So you kind of have to balance each one of these dispositions on a razor's edge to really get the most out of Achilles. Sure, if you're going to war, be outraged, destroy stuff, see what you can do. But take a look at the other one, though, with Living Legend. We get a really cool situation here. And Living Legend plays into, like I said, hot-blooded Achilles. Because remember when we looked at indignant, it said Achilles refusing duels. Well, he can get into duels. He does duel a lot of people. Winning duels over great warriors is part of grieving. Great warriors refusing duels outrages him. So if I were to click Living Legend and I were to click, let's just choose someone, and this challenger menu will grow as you deal with more and more people throughout the map. And this is your kind of, I guess you call it confidence, right? The people now doubt that Achilles truly is a living legend. And as you increase this legacy, you get more influence, you get more instant recruitment to your of units, and you get a reduction in upkeep cost of all units, which is very strong, especially in the late game. So if I press location, it brings me immediately to the location of this gentleman. Then I press confront. Left click to confront this challenger. Alternatively, defeat them in battle to remove them from the list. So he refuses me. And look at this, look what happens here. My blood beginneth to boil. So my outrage has changed by 10% due to a great warrior refusing my duel. So I don't have to press that button. I can just simply go and fight them in combat. But I think that it depends really on your strength rank according to theirs. Like Elopia, their strength rank 2, we are 7. I think if I press Phthia, Phthia, that might work. There we go, a duel before the gods. Achilles' rival throws a great tantrum upon hearing his demands. Only the gods themselves, he says, can decide who is the greatest warrior of all time. Should Achilles wish to prove his claim, he is welcome to face his challenge in an honorable duel. You press accept, and then you go ahead and he has that duel. It takes him some time, and you have another commander who steps in to deal with the conflict. And as you progress through the turn, he will deal with the duel. So those are his 2 mechanics here. I know I said I was going to make this 5 minutes. It's longer. oh well. But the result here is that you now know a little bit on how Achilles' mechanics work. Living Legend, while it is very important and it does contribute to your overall success as Achilles, it also plays very heavily into Hot-Blooded, right? Grieving is now influenced by 5% because we destroyed units, or some units were destroyed in his army, even though it's just meant he left the army. It's kind of a weird bug. But then this, 10% from a great warrior refusing our duel. You have to be mindful of anything you're selecting when you do these Living Legend things or anything you're actually doing on the campaign map, even more sensitively than any other character. But if you are looking to play I'm actually going to do this through the diplomacy menu, a campaign for Achilles, you start out right here in Phthia. And your first opponent should be the Olopians right here on your right. They are a good target, and you want to take them out fast. And then push west into Thessaly, knock out the Thessalians, and then move north up here and take out this region. Now, the big issue you're going to deal with as Achilles is your cultural influence. Right now, he is an Achaean culture, obviously, but he's surrounded by Aeolians. So you want to make sure that as you are pushing through your campaign with Achilles, you're making sure to produce any kind of building that will help out with increasing your influence. This one right here, the Chieftain's Hall, will help out significantly with your influence over the province. So hopefully this gives you a really good idea of how to pursue a campaign with Achilles. You will particularly enjoy a campaign with Achilles if you are really interested in doing fights one-on-one with your character. You want your character to be the one that goes and kills enemy heroes, no problem. And you want to be the one that also is doing constantly flanking attacks with your units. That is such a huge emphasis for Achilles' army, and you really have to play upon it as best as possible to try and maintain as much of an advantage when you're fighting in battles with Achilles' army. Otherwise, in a straight upfront fight, his armies will start to lose hand over fist against other forces. So you really want to take advantage of that flank attack improvement, that stock, and the ability to throw weapons like he has. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of what kind of campaign Achilles is. Moving over to Agamemnon, we get the character that the game recommends as the tutorial character. But as I've said earlier, is not really that easy. He does have a lot of situations he does have to deal with, but he gets two very interesting faction mechanics in King of Men and Lion's Share, which we're about to go into. But different from Achilles, Agamemnon gets access to the Warlord, for I believe he himself is a warlord, if I can remember correctly. Now, the Warlord is different than, say, a Defender. A Defender is a defensive combatant, versus a Warlord, while still a combatant, he does have a lot of abilities that buff up his units, help disrupt the enemy units, and overall just kind of increases the army itself, less so than himself. Now, he also has another distinction called Warlord Mentor, which makes him a very good governor. So, like it says right here, not only a commander, but an expert at managing territories. Now, the units for Agamemnon are also pretty interesting. He's got Agamemnon's Guard, which are two-handed spear infantry, Champions, which are two-handed axe infantry, and then light javelin men. Now, the big thing here is these two are heavily armored, like very heavy armor, at 100 armor. Axe and spear infantry units that do a lot of damage, and the biggest thing about them is this ability right here, battlefield healing. So when outside of combat, this unit replenishes hit points over time. So as long as they're not fighting another unit on the battle map, they will be replenishing their health. So you'll really like Agamemnon's army if you want to have that up front, just hold the line force while you just slowly chip away at them and heal from your wounds. So here we are in turn 1 of King Agamemnon's campaign, and we'll take a look at his two faction mechanics. So for King of Men, he gets a very interesting ability here. He gets Akita, Tarita, and Rawakita. These three distinctions right here. So essentially, when you recruit a hero, you can then appoint them to one of these three distinctions. Akita is a companion, basically what it is. Rakita, or Tarita is a landowner, and Rawakita is like a commander of people, leader of men. And essentially, these distinctions give these heroes specific bonuses, and they can only be appointed at ranks 3 for the Akita, 5 for the Rakita, and Tarita, and rank 8 for the Rawakita. And the way that these work here is if you hover over them, you get motivation, recruitment cost of all army is reduced for this army, or recruitment cost of all army units for this army is reduced, a reduction to the success chance of enemy actions, and +1 to local recruitment capacity. So you can have 5 very capable generals out there, which have a nice way to really recruit up a ton of units. Then with the Taritas, you've got 2 to motivation, 1 reduction to construction time of all buildings, and +5 happiness in the local province. So you've got 3 characters that can act as really strong governors or province managers. This is great with the Warlord Mentor title or for the hero. So if I were to say recruit, let's see if we have one here. A Warlord Mentor, this character would be particularly good at being a kind of governor or manager of a province. Then our last one though, the Rabokita, is the kind of hero of the people, right? And this guy increases motivation, which is an individual measurement of whether or not that character wants to listen to your orders, basically. An increase to melee defense of all units and morale, as well as casualty replenishment and melee attack for that army. So you can make like the ultimate general that can be marching alongside or separately from you on a separate campaign as you conquer the Aegean, which makes for a really nice kind of army here for Agamemnon. Now he gets another ability called Lion's Share. Now he's the only one who can vassalize and demand tribute from the vassals he creates throughout his campaign. Agamemnon has that unique mechanic that no one else has. So essentially how this works is you would select a vassal from this list, and that list will continue to grow, and you have a tax rate. So you can use this slider to say, okay, well, that's going to be the taxes from now on. Every turn, excuse me, every turn, I want a ton of money from you. And if let's bring this down to 4. You can see it reflected at the top, the numbers at the top here. So for instance, right now, Lion's Share for gold, because of the bottom tax rate, it's giving me 4. I'm going to jack this all the way up. I'm a tyrant. I hover over it, Lion's Share says 13, and it's reflected right here. But this also shows you the amount of discomfort or the relations penalty that you will get by having a tax rate this high. So you do have to balance this tax rate out with the current disposition of the relationship of your vassals. For instance here, I mean, I'm trusted friends with these guys. So the Trojan, I'm not necessarily worried about them getting up a tizzy for me having a higher tax rate. So you don't want to do this unless you're really, really, really up against the wall and you need a high tax rate. You're probably better off kind of floating around here like the, I think that's 4, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 distinctions. So the first 3 are probably the safest ones, and the latter 2 are probably the most dangerous, and you really only want to use those when you're, like I said, up against the wall. But you also have the way to get a quick infusion of resources. These 5 buttons at the bottom, you can press one, and that vassal will then give you that amount of resource. So for example, we'll click Trojan, and you know what? Our gold's pretty low. Yep. Boom. We get 48. They're not too happy about that, though. They're not too happy at that. Your decision must have been perceived as greed, for diplomatic relations with all of your vassals has decreased. So it's not just the individual vassal, it's more than that. So if we take a look, a greedy master, Mycenae, -50 now to our relations. So it's not terrible. We're still at 164 total, but you can't just keep doing this. You can't keep taxing them. Like I said, you want to be able to kind of run that knife's edge. Every character has some sort of mechanic like that. So be mindful of that as you kind of progress through it. So with Agamemnon though, as you kind of take a look through this map, your big focus, actually, I always like doing it through the diplomacy screen. That way you can kind of see. If you sort things by attitude, I find that's the best direction for your campaign, and the Tyrians are a really good first target for you. What's so great about them is that they're also the culture of Achaean. So converting them over is not actually going to be a laborious process. You pretty much are going to attack and take the city, and then you have got it. So from there, you can actually work on cementing your vassals and your relationships with other nations around you. Like, for example, Argos, they're already got a pretty sterling relationship with you. Sparta and Troyzen are already in, cahoots with you. So take a look at who's in a positive situation with you and then really go from there. So if I take a look at this, we all know they're not going to like us. My next target would be the Corinthians, which are just to my north anyway. Now this will be a different target because it's got a different culture too. And it'll be nice to kind of shore up your back so that you're not constantly against an enemy. You would take out the Tyrians, move to the Corinthians, and then choose another low attitude target. Oh, the Amazon's all the way over here. We don't want those. You can even start to expand out over in this direction. But Athena is the next one right after that, and you can kind of cascade in this direction up this way. What I've noticed, the big thing with Agamemnon is the whole left portion of the map is in league with you. The whole right portion of the map is not. So the natural progression of your campaign should be east and north towards Troy. So that should be the general direction of where you go, which is around this region anyway. So just kind of dot your way through the map getting there. And you will like an Agamemnon campaign if you're looking for a very nice frontline type of character that can also vassalize and create essentially this massive empire of independent states working under you and alongside you. So if that's the kind of diplomacy you're after, you're going to like playing as Agamemnon. You're going to like the way you look. I guarantee it. Next up is Sean Bean. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Odysseus is probably one of the hardest campaigns on the map. Next to Paris. I feel Paris is just unnecessarily hard for some reason. And the reason behind this is that his faction mechanics are not that awesome. They're good, but they're not that awesome. And we'll go into those in just a second. One big thing too about Odysseus that differs from the rest of the Danaans, not just simply the ones that we've talked about, it's even different than all the Trojans, is that all of his units are ranged skirmisher style units that focus on using that superb range, that superb speed to really get around your target and have a lot of crossfire enfilades from javelins thrown down into them. And the nice thing too is that they, for the most part, all have a considerable amount of armor piercing damage. So even fighting against heavily armored units, Odysseus can thrive. But it really relies on you being a really good tactical genius when you come into those combats. And that's Odysseus in a nutshell, right? Like, he wasn't all about the guts and glory of standing on the front line and shouting and pushing the line back little by little. He was about outwitting his opponent. And you have to play like that when you're playing as Odysseus. He has a strong emphasis on envoys and on spies, as well as using his units to ambush and assault things from different angles. So you're really going to be doing that a lot. Like I said, some of his units get unstoppable, stalk, and then snipe. Snipe allows your unit to shoot while hidden without revealing itself when it does shoot. Hide, as well as Vanguard deployment, which allows you to deploy outside of your standard deployment zone, and again creating those ambushes and those enfilading kind of kill boxes of fire. His best unit though is the Odysseus's Midnight Runners, which are a two-handed spear infantry unit, which is very strong. They get a flanking attack improvement as well as stalk. They also get fire while moving. You can see they're going to be doing a lot of damage on the flank and just shooting into things rear and sides. Let's jump into turn 1 of Odysseus. So here we are at turn 1 for the Lord of Ithaca. Now we'll take a look at the safe havens mechanic. So if I click on a spy, and you can see all the actions a spy can do and what they pertain to, right? So outrider, standing passive, so on and so forth. But you see safe haven is one in the foreign settlement. Let's go over here and set up a safe haven. We'll just kind of trunce his way over. We'll set it up. And then we have a building we can now build in a settlement that is not ours. And we have three tiers of safe haven. We get this first one that allows us to make these units. This other one that allows us to do that. So it's pretty much ranged versus melee is essentially what it allows you to do. And from there, you can actually recruit even if you're in enemy territory. So you can have your envoy your spy go out way ahead of you, set up these safe havens, and even if you get into a really brutal battle, like say over here, you'll be able to recruit as soon as that battle's over. And after you've set up the envoy, I keep saying envoy, after you set up the safe haven, let's just make this Warrior's Lodge real quick. press this, go to my safe haven menu, I can see where these safe havens are on the map. I can press this button and jump directly to it, and it shows me what is being built there. So it's under construction, so that's being built. Now, again, as soon as you take over this location, the safe haven is destroyed, and I don't know if you get the resources back. I've been trying to test it, but I also have just not figured out whether or not you get the resources back. But you just lose that safe haven because you now own the settlement. Now, the other mechanic he has got is called Coastal Mastery. Now, if I hover over the boat stands here, there are 5 tiers of building. A standard hero only gets access to 3. And from here, he gets 3 recruitments. The first one gives him some islanders, which are a nice axe and shield early infantry unit. A nice progression up here to island club warriors, which are a little bit heavier in the armor department, but still on the light scale, but have a little bit better damage, charge bonus, so on and so forth. Now, the real winners are the heavy shielded spearmen. This is some of the best spearmen that he has access to, and they really shine. And you can just get it from increasing your commerce by making these dockyards up to tier 4. So those are the 2 big differences or big things for Odysseus. Now, from that, they're not huge. They're not terribly massive mechanics that give you a huge advantage. I'm just going to be totally upfront with you guys. It is nice that you do get what is essentially 8% more resources and food, and you also get more growth by having a tier 4 and tier 5 dock. But ultimately, Odysseus's campaign is very difficult because he doesn't get mechanics that really help him. What I've found is that the safe havens, especially as you're kind of jumping through these islands, the safe havens actually tend to hinder your spy because you're not breaking open the walls or hindering or destroying the army. They really start to shine when you decide to fight armies or settlements that are on the mainland, because then you can actually establish something. You've got more territory to navigate your way around. So the early game, safe havens isn't huge, but the mid to late game is when it really starts to pick up, especially when you get a nemesis target that focuses you. You can use safe havens to kind of have a fallback point to regenerate your forces in the meantime. Now, again, like I said, Odysseus's army is really focused on range combat. All of his units have range combat. All of these guys, sword skirmishers, everything. So with that, you want to make sure that you're building up any of the, I believe it's either Zeus or Hera, is the divine will that is focused more on range combat. Yeah, here it is. So Zeus gives you a plus 15% to missile damage of javelin units, and that is primarily what you're going to be using. So buffing up Zeus and keeping that strong and heavy is going to be really beneficial. And I believe there's another one that gives this. Here it is. Plus 20% to missile damage of slingers, because you will have access to slingers. And I think someone just gives you raw missile damage. But, oh, here it is. Apollo gives you range to archer units and reload skill of missile units. Now, an archer unit is different from a slinger and a javelin, obviously, but missile reload skill is applicable to all of archer, javelin, and slingers. So I would say Zeus, followed by Hera, then followed by Apollo, are the best ones for trying to focus and really get the most out of using Odysseus's army. Like I said, you're really going to enjoy Odysseus if you want a very tactical commander that requires you to use your units in a very strategic way across the battle map. And in addition to that, this is the closest thing you're going to get to a spy master. Taking a look at he himself, he does give plenty of bonuses to campaign movement at sea. He does get a reduction to the attrition in deep sea waters. So you're going to be moving through a lot of that as you progress through an Odysseus campaign. So hopefully this helps you out in determining if you'd like to be Odysseus, the Lord of Ithaca. But like I said, please be ready for a more difficult campaign with less durable units and a heavier emphasis on light and medium armor. And when you really kind of take out your initial conflict right here, you're going to expand onto this portion of the map ASAP. So if I take a look, the Teleboans, they have this island right here as well. But this next location is going to be the one you're going to progress up to. And you'll progress north because your epic mission is going to take you in this direction anyway. So getting access to this location and then this one eventually are going to be pretty pivotal for you. Let me see. What do these guys start at? Oh, these guys you have a non-aggression pack with. So I wouldn't jump into war with them, but you'll go there for your epic mission regardless. But moving in this direction will be pretty key, and I think that once you get a nemesis target, you'll have a natural progression to your campaign from there. But let's move on to our last Danaan hero. And here we are with Menelaus, King of Sparta. Keep in mind, though, this is not the Sparta of Thermopylae. This is not the Sparta that we know to be fighting in massive phalanxes. This is not that typical Sparta. This is a different time. This is pre all of that. And with it, you've got a much different situation on your hands, because you're not going to be fighting these awesome, amazing spear units. In fact, Menelaus has the strongest axe warriors in the game. They have amazing armor, they have really high damage, and they also have fire wills to moving. They also get strong vigor. So their stamina on the combat map is not going to drain as quickly as it would normal units. They also get a nice flanking defense improvement. So Menelaus himself is an epic defender style hero. So these guys right here, like we've talked about before. Oh, I'm sorry, defender. And with that, you really get a character that can hold the line in ways that are different from Agamemnon. Agamemnon does have some aggressive tendencies within his army, but I feel like Menelaus is really that rock that can just hold for a long period of time because of the high amount of armor, the good strong vigor capabilities, and the damage output. I feel like the King of Sparta can really expand across the map faster than any hero in the game. He does have his call to arms mechanic, which we're about to go into, as well as Spartan armies. So you'll really like Menelaus if you're looking for that strong expansion of an Achaean force across the map, usually through this kind of route, I guess you could say. I find that if you're playing as Menelaus, you'll fight Sarpedon quickly if you just kind of leapfrog your way through these islands. But let's jump into turn 1, and we'll talk a little bit about how he can do that using Spartan colonies. So here we are at turn 1 for Menelaus, and you can see he actually kind of already starts with a pretty sizable swath of land here. That's why I also think he's a little bit easier to start out with. He is nice and up against some water. He's got some natural defense in his alliances to the north. So I think he's a little bit easier to Menelaus, to be honest. But with that, we get these two mechanics. Call to arms, which is particularly awesome, and of course Spartan colonies. But call to arms enables you to pull from the units of other factions, and it's based upon your relationship with them, military or defensive alliance, and you can pull from their unit pool. The only caveat here is that faction has to be able to recruit that unit as well. So for example, I can't recruit their armored spearmen because they can't recruit their armored spearmen. But if I scroll to the bottom of this list, I get the bows of Mycenae. I get the Agamemnon's companions, those nice two-handed axe infantrymen that we talked about a second ago. Same thing with the guards and also the armored swordsmen. So as you move through these lists, you can really pull from everyone. So I think that's what makes this campaign so stand out and awesome, is that there's really no one that's off limits to you as long as you want to have positive relationships with them and create some sort of alliance. So call to arms will allow you to pull from any units as long as you, like I said, you've created that alliance with them. And I really think that is such a strong and awesome capability, and it allows you to expand quickly with the other mechanic, Spartan colonies. So clicking this button, I can see all of the, well, that might be too far out. There we go. I can see all the settlements across the map that are abandoned that I have sight on. I mean, there might be some that are up here that are abandoned that I can't see, but that's neither here nor there right now. As long as you have sight, you can settle it. And it costs you wood, stone, and food, and increases the amount depending upon your distance from that location. So for example here, Milos is pretty far from our capital, so it's going to cost us 500 wood, 150 stone, and 800 food. But I press this button, then send the goods, and boom, it's immediately founded in my name, which I think is super strong. Like I said, you can leapfrog through these islands all the way up to Sarpedon very quick. And Sarpedon's faction has a ton of centaurs you can take advantage of, which are your only cavalry units in the game, really, outside of chariots. So I think that this faction can steamroll so quickly if you really keep a strong pedal to the metal. You don't even need to bring that menu up. If you click on, say, Sparta here, for example, I can see that Edis is already ready to be colonized. We don't have the wood that we need, but I could press this button and just immediately go and colonize it. So you don't have to go through this menu if you don't want to. There's quicker ways to settle things. I think if you actually even click on, no, yeah. If you just click on one on the map itself, you can do it. So as long as you see it, you can do it. So you will really enjoy this campaign if you want to have a widespread, all-encompassing Spartan army. And like I said, Menelaus himself can just lead such a fearsome force because he gives the ability to move quickly on the campaign map, plus 5% to campaign movement range, this army. And he also has very strong units that are willing to really hold the line because of their great vigor, because of their high defensive stats, because his increase to the morale of his units. So he gets so many great abilities that makes it easier for him to expand, either across these things right here, or just make it so that his army itself is very resilient. I think this is such a huge thing too. +3 and +4 influence to this region because of him. So as I move into these new locations, I'm going to want to convert it to the Achaean influence, to the Achaean culture. And having him there for a little bit will contribute to that significantly. So like I said, if you're starting for the first time, I really think Menelaus is probably the best bet for you. And just a real quick jump over here. One thing about Menelaus's special buildings that's just different than almost everyone else, that's why we haven't gone into them, is that one will lock out the other. So the foreign encampment, which is great in case you're trying to do stand up a really quick army in a provincial capital somewhere far away from you. Foreign encampment's really nice, but it locks out the altar of Dyke. And if you come up here, this gives you favor to Zeus, which is great, and -1 to recruitment time for all units recruited through call to arms, which is awesome. And it increases happiness. So as you go through this, you have to kind of weigh which one you want to build in the provincial capital. The feast hall, +3 to recruitment rank of envoys in the province, -20% to the recruitment cost of foreign units not present in Menelaus' roster, and +2 to local recruitment capacity. Or do you want reduced recruitment time, favor to Zeus, and happiness? You have to weigh those two. So hopefully this gives you a really good idea on if you want to start as the king of Sparta and expand it to a great Spartan empire. And like I said, the direction of his campaign is pretty much just follow this island. If you do this all the way over here, you'll act as a nice southern staging point to the rest of the Achaean armies, which after finishing squabbling should be pushing over in this direction. You'll have a nice amount of natural enemies over here you can take advantage of, including Sarpedon. So with that, it brings our video here to a close. I know I had intended this to originally be just 5 minutes per hero, but it clearly went a little bit beyond that, and I apologize. Some heroes have a little bit more detailed mechanics, like Achilles versus, say, Odysseus, who has like damn near nothing. But let me know in the comment section what you think about this format for combining all 4 of these campaigns into one video. Usually I would do one hero a video. And if there's specific information you would like me to cover on the Trojan side that I did not cover in the Danaan side, say, hey, you know, I get how to play the game, I understand the mechanics, but I really don't know which altar is the best per hero or which one is the primary focus. Please give me that in the next video. And just to give you a real quick hint here, if I look at his top tier unit, it's a 2-handed axe infantry heavy armored unit. Okay, I want to specialize in heavy armor for my research, for my research tree, my royal decrees, and I want to use altars that are going to give me bonuses to 2-handed axe infantry, or in this case, 2-handed spear infantry. It's whatever unit you want to specialize in, or whatever you particularly need in your campaign is the right altar for you. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below, all that kind of action. And if you do subscribe, please go ahead and hit the bell icon so you can get notifications on my Troy streams, my Troy guides, and all the other content I'll be covering in the many years, months, forever to come. But as always, have a good one and take care.